If you need help with addiction and don't know where to go, you can call the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration 24 hours a day. The number is 1-800-662-HELP or 1-800-662-4357. They work around the clock and will help you find what you need.
Hey, everybody. I am Captain Tommy Skillville, and you were on the lifeboat. We're back. People, I want to appreciate everyone that got on the last feed. I want to appreciate all of the people that have been coming to the aid and the support of people on the boat when they needed them. There's been a lot of that going along, and it warms our heart. It really does. I want to thank my partner for being back on the other side of the glass. It's always tough when we do the weekend things, and especially this time of year. You know, the fact that you all here are here means an awful lot to us. We know that the closer we get to the holidays, it's tough. You know, everybody's got things that they need to be doing, and sorry. It's an important thing, honestly, people, to take care of one another. And what the dream of the boat was just that people would come here and take care of one another. And I'm really happy that that's happening. So my hat is off to all of you and all of that. The topic today, people, as you probably saw, is the boxes that we live in. And there was a psychiatrist, a philosopher / psychiatrist by the name of Johari, who came up with this concept originally. And because of that, it has always been nicknamed Johari's box. Now, you've heard people say a million times, if you watch any news program, if you read any blog, you do anything, you're going to hear the term thinking outside the box. Well, this is where that phrase comes from. But the box that Johari originally started talking about were boxes that are unique to each individual. For instance, if you take a man, right, you're going to have the man box. That box is going to be filled with things like what? It's going to be filled with things like we're supposed to be tough. We're not supposed to cry. We're supposed to really dig football. We're not supposed to like romantic comedies, right? All of these things that give you the impression of a man's man. We like making things with our hands, fist fights, all of those kind of things that sort of define what a man is by society's definition. All of those things get thrown into a box. Now, these boxes are as numerous as there are people, right? Because obviously there's going to be the man box. There's going to be one for females. There's going to be one for being a son, one for being a brother, one for being an uncle, one for being a grandfather, all of these different things. And what we're basically talking about is what society thinks should be a good grandfather, what society thinks is the responsibility of a good daughter or a good son or a good whatever. This gets really skewed in a lot of ways. One of the problems is that in this day and age, the box isn't really what it used to be. Obviously, we're not doing a lot of hunting. We're not doing a lot of killing. We're not doing a lot of the things that very originally sort of defined what it meant to be a man, right? The good provider. There was a long period of time in this country and around the world where it was basically assumed that the man would go out, he would earn all of the money, he would bring it home, hand it to the wife, she would do cooking, cleaning, things of that nature. Obviously, those lines aren't blurred, they're erased. None of those things fit into society the way they used to. Men and women, all work these days. And there are many situations where the woman is the primary breadwinner and the man may stay home and take care of the kids. However, there is still a stigma attached to anything that happens if it is outside the box. And this starts to really become an issue for everyone in society, right? If you're a guy that likes romantic comedies, people make slurs about you. If you're a guy who likes ballet, chances are there's going to be somebody to make some kind of remark about you that is less than flattering. And these are the things that everyone in society has to deal with on a regular basis. But there are boxes that make sense. There are boxes that we design ourselves. And when you start thinking about all of these different applications, all of these different things that apply to us as human beings, eventually you're going to realize that if you're an addict, again, these lines don't just get blurred, they get erased or they get shattered. And then we have to deal with the biggest and the worst part of this, which is society's box. And that's really what I wanted to concentrate on today. Because as I have said so many times, you're sick of hearing it. What I wanted very badly with this channel was to make sure that if we did our job and we did it right? If Mark and I were successful in this channel, then what was going to happen is you were going to get an appreciation for who the addict is. You were going to get an appreciation for the fact that addicts, first of all, you cannot throw addicts into a box. I was having a conversation with Mark, it had to be a couple of months ago, but he was talking about a billboard near where he lives. And on the billboard is a picture, and it almost looked like it had the entire Village People crew on there, right? You had a police officer, you had a guy in a hard hat, you had a doctor, you had a lawyer, you had all these different people up there. Representations of what? You had representations of different people doing different jobs, different levels of respect. Because obviously, people, whether we want to admit it or not, if you find out that the person that just entered the room is a doctor, you probably treat that person differently than if you find out the guy that just entered the room drives a truck. It's not right, but it's a fact. We all tend to treat people differently, and a lot of times very much based on what that person, that individual does for a living. But this billboard that Mark saw had all of those people up there. All of the different jobs were represented. And the caption up there said, which one of these is the addict? Because once again, people, what it means to be an addict has gotten very, very blurred. Back in the day, if you said addict, there was the Skid Row bum kind of vision that came to your head. It was somebody that was wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in 5 or 6 days, and they didn't have a job, and most likely they were homeless, and they were stealing in order to get their fix or their bottle or whatever the case may be. And we get a visual image of what we think when someone says addict. Now, whether anybody wants to admit this or not, we all get a visual image in our head when we hear certain words, certain phrases. We're always going to put people into a box, whether we should or not. And one of the things that we really hoped that this channel would successfully do is to tear that box apart. It's important to us that the world realizes that you can't tell me what a junkie looks like. You can't tell me what an alcoholic looks like. You can't tell me what a pillhead or any of the other pejorative terms that they like to use for us. Crackhead, right? I mean, yeah, you get the visual image of the guy that's, doing the shaking and he's Pookie from New Jack City. But the truth of the matter is that's not always the case. And very often these days, it is so blurred that you can't look at someone and say, well, this guy is definitely the one who's using. Because so much of our culture today is suffering from addiction that we really hoped, and I think we're probably reaching a level of success in demonstrating that not only can you not pick the addict out of a lineup based on the fact that they're an addict, and the other more important thing is this: there is so much that person has to offer society. There is so much that person has to offer the world, has to offer their family, their friends, their employers, right? Or employees, depending on, whatever the case may be. All of these different things, you should not be defining somebody by the fact that they're an addict. However, we all know that once we leave the boat, we're getting thrown in a box. I don't think anybody here is going to argue that point with me. Society is happy as hell to throw the addict into a box. And in that box are an awful lot of attributes that society has stacked on top of us. Things like we lie, we cheat, we steal, we will do anything for the next high, for the next fix, for the next bottle. Whatever your drug of choice is, you are not going to be trusted. And the truth of the matter is, when you step outside that box and you get clean and people no longer know you're an addict, all of a sudden the respect that you weren't getting is something that starts to come back. If you meet someone, that person doesn't know that I spent, almost a decade of my life in prison. If somebody doesn't know that I'm a convicted bank robber, if somebody doesn't know that I was a heroin addict, well, then I get treated completely different. If somebody just hears me speaking, very oftentimes when it gets to the part of the conversation where I admit that I'm a recovering heroin addict, usually there's a look of shock there. However, and this is something we all deal with whether we want to or not. However, the second that conversation goes from, hey, I'm Tommy, blah, 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 blah. When I get to the point where, and it does come up for a lot of reasons. Number one, I own my past. I'm not ashamed of it. And I've said this before, I don't introduce myself as, hi, I'm Tommy Scoble, I'm a heroin addict. What do you guys do? I've never felt the need to be that upfront and open the way that sometimes people in certain 12-step programs that literally introduce themselves that way. If that's something that you feel the need to do, that's fine. I mean, really, it's your business. I don't feel that. I don't think that I need to have my defining characteristic be the fact that that I was addicted to heroin. Granted, it's a very, very large part of my life. I mean, look what I do. This channel is proof that I spend a lot of my life talking about this. But I do it not because I'm bragging about it, and number two, I certainly am not doing it because I feel that by telling you instantly I'm an addict, that somehow I'm protecting myself. I tell you people what I have been through because it lends a level of credibility to what it is I'm talking about, as opposed to being someone who comes up here and talks to you about Yohari's theory and Yohari's box, where more often than not, that's just going to make you go, huh? If I take the time to mention that I have been addicted to heroin for decades, the addict is going to listen to me based on the fact that they know that I've been there. The person who is not an addict might just listen to me because I sound like I may have read a book at some point. But what happens, people, is that as society puts us into the box with all of those different things on there, you spend enough time in that box. You spend enough time with everyone in society dumping things into the box that you're forced to live in. And you start to do a couple of things. You either start to believe it, which is awful, or you just start to get that look. You start to get that personality and that look. You start to look as if you've been beat too much. You start to look as if society has really had its way with you. And for a very large segment of people in rehabilitation, this develops into a form of bitterness that is it's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to deal with. It can ruin your personality. It can change you into something that you are not. It's something and it's a reality, people. There's no way around this. What we have to do is learn to deal with these things. One of the reasons that I discuss a lot of the stuff that I discuss on this channel is not because I have the answers. Very rarely do I have the answers to anything. But what I want to do is bring up subject matters and talk about things that make you, as a recovering addict, think, to make you start to question certain things and to make you think about things before one of these situations slaps you in the face. One of the things that happens to everybody who gets sober is eventually you roll your shoulders back a little bit, right? Your chin comes up off of your chest and you roll your shoulders back and your chest puffs out a little bit. And you start feeling like, you know what? I did this, right? I beat this. Society doesn't want to hear that. One of the reasons the boat was so important is because it gives people an opportunity to come here and celebrate the fact that we are who we are. We've been able to beat something that for a very large segment of society isn't ever going to happen. The reality, people, is that so many of our brothers and sisters are going to die addicted in the acts. I mean, in living full on in the life of an addict. It's worth celebrating when one of us beats it. And it's nice to have a platform where you can come and celebrate it, where you can give somebody a virtual high five and tell them you're proud of it. The reason that we bring this stuff up and the reason that we talk about this stuff is because you're going to get slapped in the face by society. You don't think so? Trust me, I'm telling you the truth. It's going to happen. And the first couple of times is one of those things that you just deal with. However, 1 second, people. Sorry. The first couple of times you just sort of deal with it. But it starts to grate on you. And it starts to give you that look where you feel like you've been beat by society. If you know it's coming, if you know what to expect, if this is your first time getting sober, people, I promise you, a lot of people are blindsided. The first time that you say to somebody, hey, I want you to know I haven't had a drink in 7 months. We've talked about this so many times. What's the first thing you're going to get? The first thing you're going to get is skepticism, because the box that society has put anyone who says they're sober in, the first thing that goes into that box is skepticism. They're not going to believe that you're sober. And we've talked about this before. There's a reason for that, right? Most of us don't make it on the first try. And we tend to want to talk about it instantly, right? You're excited. You're fired up. You're ready to take on the world. So you're 6 days sober and you say, hey, man, I'm done. I quit. I'm never doing that stuff again. There's no chance I'm ever doing that. And 2 weeks later, they see you at a bar. So a year later, when you say to them, hey, I'm on the wagon, it's been 2 months. This time I really got it together. They're probably not particularly apt to believe you. And even if you've never, ever said, I'm clean and sober, 200 other people have, and they've watched this. So when you come for the first time and you come out and you say, hey, I decided I'm quitting. I haven't done any of that stuff and I've been sober X period of time. Number one, people, they're not going to believe you. And number two, they're not going to respect you. Amazingly, they're not going to respect the fact that you're doing this. As I talked about on the earlier feed, society is preoccupied with the fact that you needed to get clean. You understand? Into that box that they throw in all of that other great stuff for us, they throw in contempt. Why should I celebrate the fact that you were able to get off a substance you shouldn't have been addicted to in the first place? That is society's attitude. And do you know why that's society's attitude? Because they have never been in this boat. They don't know what it feels like to have a substance own you. I have never met a person who said to me, I'm thinking of getting addicted to heroin. I've watched a few movies on it, and there's been a lot of rock stars that seem to do it. I'm thinking it's going to be fun. So I'm going to go get a pile of heroin, and I'm going to get addicted to it. See how that is, right? Try out the whole junkie lifestyle for a while. See if it's something for me. It's ludicrous, right? It's a stupid thing to even hear somebody say. Or someone who says, I'm going to try to drink until I can't not drink. Right? Is that something that happens? Of course not. Everybody who ends up a drug addict or an alcoholic does so by accident. And there, but for the grace of God, goes every other person in society. Whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, something is different with the addict than it is with the non-addict. They do the same things we do. Believe it. When you talk to somebody who is not a drug addict, or you talk to somebody who is not an alcoholic, it is a very, very rare day that you talk to someone like that who has never done drugs and has never had anything to drink. The difference is their chemical makeup, their brain, and everything that makes up who they are keeps that train on the track. It allows them to do things like have 5 or 6 drinks and then not drink again, or drink for a little while and then not do any more drinking for a period of time. We're not capable of that. And they don't take that into consideration. They look at us as if we're weak. Bottom line, into the box goes weak. Society assumes that if you got addicted to a substance, it's because, plain and simple, you could not control whether or not you could continue to control your habits. You could not stop after one drink. You could not stop after getting high. People, are you understanding where I'm going with this? You are going to go out into a world that is going to treat you with contempt. And that's fine. There's no way that today we fix how society views addicts. It's not possible. Not today. I mean, we can start. And the way you start is by living a life and proving to people that you can get sober. And when you have the opportunity, you talk to people. You explain to them this process. You explain to them what it means, to become addicted. You explain to them what it means to become sober. And you do make inroads. One of the things that you see is that as society starts to, as drug addiction starts to permeate different levels of society, because there is no part of society, especially in this country today, that isn't touched by addiction. I don't care whether you're rich or poor or black or white or anything else. Drug addiction is touching the lives of everybody in America. 48% of our country either has a drug problem or has an immediate relative, brother, sister, mom, dad, who is addicted. That's the facts. That's reality. But how many times, even within your family, where you tell somebody, hey, I'm sober, and they say, that's awesome, I'm so happy for you. Your aunt and uncle are coming over. Please don't mention that when they get here. Don't talk to them about the fact that you got sober. Don't talk to them about, they're happy as hell for you. They just don't want anyone to know about it. I know that there are people on this boat who have had this experience because I've spoken to them about it. As much as you want to celebrate your recovery, as much as you want to celebrate the fact that you're sober, it is a very, very difficult thing to do that around people who haven't been addicted. Because again, they just view you as somebody that shouldn't have gotten into that situation in the first place. Just know it's coming, people. Maybe you want to gauge where you tell the story of the fact that you just got sober. Maybe you want to downplay it as much as possible until the amount of sobriety that you've got under your belt sounds better than a month. There's nothing wrong with a month of sobriety, people. There's nothing wrong with 4 days of sobriety. And around here, we will celebrate that with you. I promise you, we'll celebrate 6 hours of sobriety with you. But society is going to laugh. And I'm not beating on society. I'm just telling you the truth. This is how it works. If you doubt me, people, give it a try. But just know what's going to happen when you do. Last night we talked all about why society hates the person in recovery. And look, let's be honest, people. I did that sort of tongue in cheek, at least the end of it. I was very serious about the subject matter. But when we started talking about, the characteristics of somebody who's doing it and living the life, obviously I was clowning around with some people. We try to make this fun. But the truth of the matter is, when you really go out and you really try to proclaim your sobriety, you're not going to get treated with the excitement that you're going to get treated with here. Just know that. If you're 10 days sober and the only people that you've been sharing that fact with are on the boat, don't think you're going to get the same thing when you go out and talk to somebody at the family reunion this Christmas. You're not going to get the same effect. Hopefully family will. And there are families who do. There are. But there are also families who are going to say to you, please don't say that in front of your grandmother, or please don't say that in front of your uncle, or please don't. It's just reality. And it doesn't make them bad people. You understand? Doesn't mean everybody in society is a dirtbag. What it means is that if you haven't lived this life, then it's really difficult to try to make somebody understand it. If people in society understood the addicts at the level that we do, then there wouldn't be a boat. Plain and simple, there wouldn't be a need for it, right? Everybody would be taking care of everybody else. We would all be supporting one another, and everybody would treat people the same, regardless of whether or not they may have or may have at one time have a drug problem or be addicted to alcohol or any of the other habits that we see people fighting and struggling with every day. I needed that. So this is a subject matter that I wanted to bring up because we're getting into the holiday season. And for a great many people, this is going to be the first time that you sit down with family since getting sober. And I'll tell you something, people, if you don't think Thanksgiving is tough on people for their first time being sober, then this is probably your first Thanksgiving. I promise you, because I don't care how many of them you've done, there is a added pressure that takes place for everybody when you bring together family members that haven't hung out for long periods of time, and you bring all of that history and you bring all of those different personalities and different stories, and you bring them all together and shove them into one room, right? Everything has changed. At one time, Dad ran the entire family. Now you have your family, your brother and sister have their families, and they all come together and people start to grind, right? And there's that friction, and there's that. And what do people normally do? Well, they get gassed, right? Everybody starts having a few pops because it gets a whole lot easier to deal with, your sister you haven't seen in 4 years, and her husband, your brother-in-law, who you truthfully can't stand if you've had 2 or 3 drinks. This is a very tough time of year for addicts. There are more relapses that take place during Thanksgiving and take place during Christmas than any other time of the year. There's also more suicides. There's also more domestic violence, and there's more murders. This is a rugged period of time that we're going into, people. Don't kid yourself. Now, are we going to fix that today on the boat? Probably not, right? There's not a whole lot that the captain is going to do to step in and make it so that Thanksgiving is a easy meal to get through. Quite simply, it's just not going to be. But if you walk into that with your eyes wide open, having a real good idea of what's going to happen, and knowing that maybe this isn't the time to announce to the entire family exactly what's going on. Niall says, I believe anybody that truly loves you will not put you in a position that makes you uncomfortable. The others are not worth being around. Niall, the truth of the matter is, it's ignorance that makes people put you into that situation. It's not that they don't love you. It's just that so oftentimes, I came from a beautifully loving home. My parents were great. My brothers and sisters are great. But I'm a heroin addict. And for them to try to understand how I fell so far that I could put needles in my arm, it's not their fault. It's not. And they're trying to love, and they're trying to be supportive. But this is a very difficult thing for them. And I have a sister who, I promise you, doesn't want me talking about heroin addiction in front of her youngest, who's 21, is an adult. But she doesn't want him hearing that his uncle was using intravenous drugs. I'm not bad-mouthing families by any stretch, people. I hope you understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that much of society, family included, does not understand the mechanism of what it means to go from being a drug addict to being sober. It is a difficult thing to explain even to other addicts a lot of times. Everybody takes a different path. Everybody does something unique in their path to get sober. And there are as many opinions on drugs as there are people using them. But the majority opinion, especially in this country where I can speak with authority, is that we should lock them up and throw away the key. There is a reason that in this country, with 4% of the population of the planet, we have 26% of the population of incarcerated people on the planet. It's because we lock people up for doing drugs. And very oftentimes, family feels that way until they get a sibling or they get a son or a daughter who all of a sudden is a drug addict. I'm not saying that these people don't love you. They do.
Can I add something, Tommy?
Sure.
Yeah. I would just share a story with you, Niall. I went to a birthday party, family birthday party, and I was probably, 5-6 years into sobriety at that point. And you're still trying to get family to understand. We all know that they love us and all that, but they're never, number one, they're never ever going to understand completely unless they go through it themselves. But they can, like we've talked oftentimes, they can empathize. They don't have to sympathize, but we can empathize. But I want to say this. I was at this birthday party, and I was asked to watch my nephew, babysit him the next day. Well, it was that day I had to go pick up my script for Suboxone. And the first thing out of my mother's mouth before she thought about it, and I know she didn't feel this way, but this is how they think at first, and they still do. She said, I don't want him out there with those people. And, when that's said, you don't know how to react to that. But when she said those people, the first thing that went through my mind was, I am those people. So what I'm saying is, I know she didn't mean it that way. And I know that she probably didn't understand it fully. I understood what she was saying. And I, believe it or not, I actually agree. I wasn't thinking correctly either, taking my nephew out to a place where I'm going to get my Suboxone, right? I mean, we all know that those places aren't where you want to take little kids. Matter of fact, they're not most places like that. You're not allowed to take kids in there. But I would say that. Just understand that came from my mother. And it's very similar to what you said a minute ago about, how the family just is not going to understand all the way. But we do. That's why we're here. You know, and then I seen another comment that Niall had made about, you know, the drug addict is who only people that's going to care about us are very close people. I would strongly disagree with that. I care about everybody that's here, and that's the God's honest truth. And I don't know some of these people personally, but it would destroy me to hear something bad happen to them. So I do care, and that's why I do this, and that's why Tommy does this. And you know, I think everybody's recovery is different. I really do. I think Niall had made that point. I First off, let me say this: I really appreciate the conversation, Niall. I mean, I really do appreciate your comments because I think they're genuine, and I do think that they're well thought out. And you know, it does challenge us, but it also gives us a chance to explain our side of how we feel things. Might be a little bit different viewpoint.
I'd also like to comment to Ruby Ridge real quick. He said that earlier I said you can't spot the drug addict. What I meant was you can't label a drug addict by how they look. And I'm not talking about society slapping around people they've never met. What I mean is we have to work inside of a society that we live in. You absolutely are going to have people you work for. You're going to have people you work with. We have a sphere of influence in society. I use society as a title for individuals you're not related to. I don't mean that people you've never met are going to come up to you and start to give you crap for being a drug addict. What I mean is that you need to understand as you get sober and you start to work with people or you start to make friends that if these people aren't in recovery or if these people don't have a serious history with others who are, that you tend to find yourself being judged solely because of the things that you say. So if you tell somebody out in the general ether that I will call society, that you're in the process of rehabilitation, that you haven't had anything to drink in 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 years, whatever the case may be, much of society is still not going to be on the same page in terms of treating people the way you're hoping you're going to be treated. You would like to be received as somebody who is truthfully fighting to make a new start. You want to be treated as somebody that is making an effort to turn their life into something. More often than not, you're going to be treated as a criminal. And that's really one of the problems with society. If that wasn't the case, group therapy would not be nearly as important as it is. The reason that group therapy is the gold standard in drug rehab, the reason that what we do here is, for all intents and purposes, a type of group therapy. The reason that that is how everybody does this is because when you're around individuals who have been through the same experiences, they're going to treat you with a level of respect that you're not going to get from people outside. This is not unique to drug addiction. This is just something we talk about here because this is a drug addiction channel. But if you come back from war, they don't take you and put you into a group therapy with people that haven't been to war because it doesn't pay off. Or, God forbid, you're somebody who has been a victim of sexual assault. They're going to put you in a room with people who have been through that as well because they're going to understand and they're going to treat you with a level of compassion that, as much as we would love for society to be great across the board, you're going to have jackasses who say things like, well, she was wearing a miniskirt, right? That's the nature of society. I don't mean people. When I say society, we're talking about the general big group of people out there who don't know the experience of what it means to A, be addicted, and to B, try to beat that addiction. So what ends up happening far more often than not is you're treated in such a way that brings you down. And that's fine. There's not much that can be done about it. But the fact that it's going to happen is really what we're trying to bring to people's attention. And I will agree with Niall. Every situation is different. And there are family out there that as soon as they hear someone in their family is addicted to heroin, they immediately throw their arms wide open. And they say to grandma and grandpa, hey, he was addicted to heroin, but he's beating it. But that isn't the general brushstroke. In fact, it's the exact opposite. And I respect your disagreeing. I mean, you're doing it politely. I have no problem with that. But that is the general experience, which is why what if someone else's thoughts about me are none of my business? Well, here's the thing. Even if the thoughts about you are none of your business, you're going to experience them. I mean, if this sort of happens behind closed doors, that's great. But what you'll find is this: you get a job at a place, and there's 6 of you working in there. 2 of you are drug addicts. They know you're in recovery. They know you got 6 months. Watch how those 2 are treated as compared to everybody else. The business isn't going to want to take a chance on those guys and promote them and train them and do the same types of things with those individuals as they do with the other 4, because in their head, you're a bad risk. And these type of little things continue to permeate throughout all of your process of trying to get sober. And again, you could disagree, but know that across the board, if you think you're going to be treated with the level of respect that you're hoping to get, more often than not, that's simply not the case. And it's not something that you can do a whole lot about except be prepared. You got to sort of put on an armor of knowing that you're doing the right thing, and jackasses are going to treat you in a way that is going to make you feel less about yourself unless you know going into it that that's a possibility. And the more you can get yourself bulletproof against what you know is coming, the better off you're going to be. Am I saying this is every single person you're going to meet? Of course not. But that's not what you plan for when you plan for the contingencies. You plan for things that could happen. Know this is a possibility. Plan it in your head ahead of time so that if it slaps you in the face, A, you're not shocked, and B, you can go, you know what, I had a feeling this might happen.
Hey, Neil, let me jump in here real quick. Niall, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying with, why would anybody you work with need to know that you're a recovering addict? I think that is one thing that is a base to base or a person to person and job to job type of decision, whether or not you want to talk about that. But one, obviously that we all know the negatives of that, right? I mean, if you say that to certain jobs, they may give you a hard time or whatever. But there is a positive to letting it all out there. And the positive is that you no longer have to worry after the fact. Once everybody knows, it's just like the 8 Mile thing. You guys ever seen the movie 8 Mile? What did he do at the end of that video? That movie. He just dropped it all out there and nobody had nothing to say after that. Not one thing, because there was nothing there to hide. So if you're at a job that you need to keep it that way, I understand. I completely do, because there are certain places that you just simply can't. But I also would say this, that once if it is possible to do those kinds of things and you're able to be that transparent about things, if you can, I would suggest doing that. And that's just my own thing, and that is a personal decision, and again, there is no right or wrong answer to this question. I don't think. I really think
and quite often it's not even a choice.
Right.
You say, why would anybody at work know? Well, if I go to work, I have to take a drug test for the federal government, right? There are a lot of people who have situations. I'm trying to get into recovery and turn my life around. I've got over 6 years of sobriety, but every single night I got to call a number, and that they're going to tell me whether or not I have to go in and take a drug test. That is going to be something that I am going to have to do every single time it happens. So the first thing I got to tell a boss is there is a time that I am going to have to leave to go take a drug test. I'm also going to have to say to them, before I get hired, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And very oftentimes, people who are in recovery have been. So as opposed to just saying, yes, I've been convicted of a felony, where you don't get hired, they say to you, we'll give you an opportunity to explain why it is you were, if mitigating circumstances is how they describe it. So for me, that's saying, yeah, I spent decades addicted to heroin. During that time, there's a lot of things that I did illegally to try to get drugs, including robbing banks. Now, it has not stopped me from getting hired every time I went to get a job. But trust and believe, every single person in that room was going to be very well aware of my past.
Yeah.
Because if you think that that's not the story they want to tell the entire room, oftentimes people, no matter how much you would like to hide your past, it's not really always an option. Depending on how far. And look, if you're just a guy that had a few beers and that turned into a drinking problem and you got it under control before you had your 4th DWI, or before you wound up in a situation where this is going to follow you for the rest of your life, then it is what it is. But very oftentimes for addicts, you hear the term rock bottom. Well, a great many of us and a great many people listening to this have in fact hit rock bottom. And in doing so, you're going to have to be sharing a lot of these details and a lot of these facts for a very long period of time.
Well,
And that's just the reality.
I think you said it in a couple of videos back. You know, I guess at the base of this, it comes down to one of the first things we have to change about being, you know, what we used to do is we now have to become an honest person. And if you're not able to do that, and I get that, you know, if you're trying to get, obviously you're not going to walk up to somebody, hey, my name's such and such, I'm a drug addict. You know, I get that. I understand that. But after the fact, and you get to talking and doing whatever you need to do, that for most relationships to build, you know, you don't wait too much longer before you tell them that, because you really just don't want to waste your time. Because if they do feel a certain way about it, about that kind of a thing, I would want to know sooner than later. You know, and I got a job promotion at work once, and on my application, I didn't graduate high school on time. And I had put down that I had a high school diploma when I got hired on 10 years before. But when I got promoted, I told them straight up, listen, hey, on my application, you know, I just told them, hey, I lied about that, right? Now, I did that for a reason, because I didn't want to jump up into some new job and then get used to that standard of living, and then for them to come across something like that and say, well, now you're back down to throwing boxes or whatever you're doing, right? So I think that kind of plays into that. I think it's kind of like heading off at the pass. I don't know how else to. And again, I really do think that it is an individual, you know, case to case, person to person. You have to be able to judge who you're talking to. But again, this is such a big subject. It really is. It's a big thing for a lot of people, and everybody's going to have a different opinion. And I welcome the opinions myself.
No question.
And I know you do too. That's pretty much what you were saying earlier. And yeah.
Well, and Niall, it's awesome when you are in a position that you don't have to announce it to people. One of the things that I was saying earlier was I would recommend for a lot of people, especially if you're early in sobriety, to not come out and say, hey, or introduce yourself that way. What I'm talking about is situations for me anyway, where that's not an option. And Niall, there are so many situations in my life for the rest of my time on this planet that it's not an option for me. It's fantastic if you were able to get sober before that became an issue. I think that's awesome. I really do. I wish very much so that was the case for me, but it's not. I flushed, 2 3/4 decades down the toilet, and in the process of doing that, racked up about 13 felonies. In the process of that, became incarcerated and had to do time in a federal penitentiary. Because of that, I can't go to and get a job anywhere that I don't have to disclose to them that I am a convicted felon. Now, if I go 7 years without doing anything wrong, that's 7 years, by the way, from the time I'm off paper. I can then file paperwork to have those records sealed. But you know what happens then? Go ahead.
Hey, Ruby, I think Tommy hid you on accident. So I just want to put that out there.
What happened?
You accidentally blocked Ruby. I'll have to go in and fix it later.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, I just wanted to make sure she knew it wasn't on purpose. That was not done on purpose.
No, I apologize. If I did that, I apologize.
Not a big deal.
It's one of those situations that for some of us, it's never going to be an option. You quite simply put, you're going to have to disclose that information under the best of circumstances. I'm 10 years away from being able to seal those records. And people, if you think sealing those records means that your record is clean, what it says is sealed. So when I go in to talk to somebody at a job interview and they do a background check, they come in and go, "Why is your record sealed?" This is not a society that. As much as we're talking about it, and there have been some great strides made, the First Step Act went a long way to doing things to try to help people who are coming off the deck. And make no mistake, about 80% of people who are in prison, there's a drug element to their crime. There's a drug element to why they're in there, and this is a reality for a great many people. Thank you, Alan Ballantyne. It's good to see you, my brother. Really good to see you. CW Terry says it was all Johnny's fault. Apparently, Johnny was able to do that without the use of a wrench, but my brother has always been that guy. If there's a will, Johnny will find a way. But people, make no mistake, this is healthy. I have no problem whatsoever with people who disagree on certain things. No matter what you want to get down to the minutia of it, times are going to come up where people are going to find out you're an addict, or you're going to choose to live your life in such a way that, depending on how long you were using, maybe there's 30 years of your life you just won't talk about, or there's 30 years of your life that you gloss over. And you know what? That's fine. It comes up so often in so many different ways. I personally am not going to get too far into a relationship with someone that I don't tell them who I am. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you don't want 4 months into a relationship with somebody that you care about, male, female, whatever the case may be, and then drop a bomb that, by the way, the guy you just fell in love with is a recovering heroin addict and he's been to federal prison for bank robbery. We live in a digital age where people, look people up and do things. It really becomes an area that you could spend the next 6 weeks talking about, whether or not you have the ability, or whether or not you should take the opportunity to discuss, your sobriety and your previous drug use with people. But the truth of the matter is, this is going to follow you, people. It is absolutely going to follow you. And there are as many different stages of sobriety and stages of use on this channel as you can imagine. There are people who 6 months into their drug addiction came to the realization that they're really, they found themselves in a bad spot and they decided to get sober. That's awesome. Best case scenario, right? Couldn't be any better than that. But there are an awful lot of people for whom, we hit rock bottom. And because of that, there are, terms of incarceration. There are all of these different things that we did while under the influence of whatever our drug of choice was that are going to follow us wholeheartedly for the rest of our lives. I liked Joe Birdwell's response. He said, he went and told the people he works with that he said, yeah, I had a drug problem, but I'm 42 days sober. That's great. He had been working for those people long enough that they had faith in him already. The truth of the matter is, oftentimes, if they find out these things and they find out these things from someone other than you, they're going to find a way to get rid of you. If they can find out who you are and you can, let these people have a handle on it. But the point of this, people, the point of this is this: make no mistake, society puts people in boxes. Now, you can choose how much information you let out to society, but society is going to make decisions about you based on what you tell them. Now, if you decide to share with them that you're an addict, know what's coming. That was the point of this whole discussion. The point was not to argue or debate whether or not this is a good thing to tell, whether it's a bad thing to tell. Right from the beginning, I said, hey, if you decide to share your sobriety with society, here's what is going to happen. Right now, I wouldn't tell you whether or not to. That's something that's going to be part of your conscience, part of your program going forward. There are people, like I said in the beginning, who introduce themselves by saying, hi, I'm Tommy Skillville, I'm a heroin addict. For those individuals, they believe for accountability purposes and for other reasons that they want that out in the open. They also don't want someone to say, you hear it a lot of times with alcoholics, they don't want someone to say, hey, after work, we're all going out to get a beer. If you introduce yourself with, hi, I'm Tommy, I'm an alcoholic, you're probably not getting that invite. And for that reason, there are a great many people who do that. That's up to you, right? How you choose to allow society to know or not know about your drug addiction is completely 100% up to you. What I'm telling you is, when that day comes that society finds out that you have been addicted to drugs, whether that is by you telling them, whether that is by them Googling you enough, there is going to be a reaction from society. That reaction, happy birthday, Derek. No, it was Derek's birthday. Happy birthday, Derek. As soon as we get right to the end of this, Mark is actually going to sing happy birthday to you. He's shaking his head in the opposite direction. Yeah, whether or not you decide or how much you decide to share with people is completely up to you. The fact remains, you are going to get to a point where society is going to find out that you have been a drug addict by your mouth, by the computer, by somebody else's mouth. I just want, before that happens, for you to be very aware of the fact that there is a box that you are going to be painted in. You can't be angry at society for this. I guess you could. But the point is, society's got plenty of reason to have preconceived notions about drug addicts. Your family has preconceived notions about drug addicts until they find out you're one. Nothing will bring somebody into the fold in terms of what they understand and how they view things, like their best friend, significant other, son, daughter, uncle, whatever, becoming an addict. But once that piece of knowledge gets out there, be prepared that they're not going to treat you like you're treated on the book. They're not going to treat you the way you're treated in an NA or an AA meeting. So oftentimes, the people who are just starting to get sober make the assumption that the rest of the world will be as excited for them as we are. That more often than not is not going to be the case. And if you allow the slings and arrows, or if you allow the looks, or if you allow any of those things to grate on you, well, that's something that's going to put you into a position that may not be the greatest. So just know, right? Knowledge is power. Get an idea of what this is going to mean to you before that situation rears its head. And in doing so, you're probably going to find yourself in a better situation. Knowledge is power. It's always going to be. And the more informed you are, the better off. That's just how it boils down to, right? Just say no, spell it with a freaking K. So, people, this is the time of every show where I happily throw my microphone to the gentleman on the other side of the glass, who today has kind of been doing this number. I didn't get the entire the bobblehead thing was a little different than average. Mark, how was tree hunting, my brother?
That was all right. We had a pretty good family day. All my three kids, we all come back here to my house, and my two boys, obviously, people might not know, but I got grown adults. I got a 26-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 14-year-old. But we always make a tradition. We go get Hallmark ornaments, one for each. And when our boys turned 18 or whatever, whenever they decided to move out, they get to take whatever ornaments they had with them.
Oh, very cool.
So that lets, get some kind of a head start in their own little thing. And, wherever they're going to be living. And hopefully they'll take a little piece of us with them. And remember that, it's one of those things that it was my wife's idea, and I thought it was an awesome idea until I look over at my tree and I got like $6,000 worth of ornaments on the daggone thing. I could sell my tree to pay off my mortgage, whatever. But no, it's a great thing. It really is. We've always enjoyed Christmas, and we try to keep it all in, focused on the right thing. But back to this subject. Listen, guys, it's a hard one. It really is. I really do appreciate all of the comments in there. I mean, none of it was being disrespectful. It was just somebody stating their opinions, and I think that's healthy. It's extremely healthy.
No question.
And none of us are always going to agree all the time anyway. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Especially those of us, and if you think about it in your own family, the ones that you're closest with, you probably you voice it more than when you disagree. So the closer we all become, we're going to be more and more comfortable just saying what we need to say. And the fact that we're able to allow that to happen says a lot for this chat room, says a lot for this boat altogether. And I really do appreciate all of it in there. I never want anybody not to be able to say what they think, as long as it's respectful. And that's kind of where we're at, and it's a little different. You don't get that in a whole lot of places. You really don't. Everybody wants an echo chamber here, there, and every freaking where, and the fact that we're able to have discussions like this, it's awesome. It really is. And thank you for being respectful in there when you're not agreeing. Sometimes that's hard to do. It is. It's a skill that you almost have to learn. But that's just my opinion on that. And again, I jumped in earlier when I thought I had something to add to the conversation there, because I had been through a few things there. And to clarify about the billboard, That was a real billboard. That's a story that I shared with Tommy, and I think everybody else here. That billboard was up, and the point is to shock the general public into understanding that this opiate crisis or addiction in general, you can't. It's hitting across everything. It is. It doesn't matter what job. It doesn't matter what social class you're in. It's everywhere. And obviously, certain drugs are going to appeal to a certain social class, depending on price and all that kind of thing. But even after you start that stuff, that even goes away because we find ways to get what we need. So it definitely does. It goes all the way across, and it's such a hard thing to understand because I'm 10 years into my sobriety, and it is a little different than when I was new at it, right? Because you were kind of timid at first to kind of bring this out, but once you realize, it's so much. I guess for me, it was so much a weight lifted off my shoulders when I would just let it be and let it be whatever it is, and then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to wonder, well, am I going to go in tomorrow and somebody's going to figure out I was a drug addict and I'm not going to have a job? Is that really how I want to go home and try to rest? But when you're trying to get that job, what's the right thing to do. But like Tommy said, nowadays they're going to ask you, and it's going to be up to you. And I do think that each situation may have a little different in what you can do and what you can't. But I don't know. And I honestly don't know the answer to that myself. I think it's for all of us to kind of gauge as we go through life and see how other people are doing things. But I will say this world is just now, and that's why we're able to do what we're doing. They're starting to be able to accept what's going on here. And that's the fact. I've seen it myself. When I first got in recovery, there was a huge stigma about it. But there still is. Don't make no mistake, there is. And it's up to us to stop that. That's the only way it will. And having discussions like this is a great thing because it will. And again, I think you did a great job putting it out there, Tommy. It's a hard subject. It really is. Especially for those of us that's just trying to get better,
Well, and we're not going to change society. And I think, I'd like to a shout out to Niall because we steered this in a direction that I think is healthy because it really does make you question whether or not it's something, how much you're going to want to share. But regardless of how it gets out, the day is coming. Just know it's going to happen to you, people. That's really what I want from everybody. And that does bring us up to the top of the witching hour. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world, especially when you double it up on the weekends. It's always great when we can get the early crowd because there's so many people that don't get to get on them. The 3 o'clock today had the largest turnout that we've ever had for a 3 o'clock call, which is awesome. It really is. Makes me really happy. Tomorrow it's going to be at 2 o'clock because I'm going to a raging keg party at the church tomorrow. The church I go to is doing Thanksgiving actually tomorrow. So we're going to be doing the Thanksgiving thing, and I got roped into making stuffing. So I will be putting this on tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So between now and 2 o'clock, now and 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, when I will make another video, I promise I will make another video. What I would like you to do, people, is try to reach out there and maybe try to help somebody. I am Captain Tommy Scoble on the other side of the glass.
Mark Wages.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.